much resignation. He knew, just like I did, that this was how things were in our family. It hurt, but it wasn't shocking. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. We stayed because leaving right away would have caused a scene, and that's the last thing we wanted. I spent the rest of the time trying to keep my daughter occupied, distracting her with games and small talk, anything to avoid thinking about that gift bag. We left early the next morning, not saying more than a few polite words to everyone before heading out. On the drive back, my daughter was unusually quiet, lost in her own thoughts. I could tell she was trying to make sense of what had happened, trying to understand why her gift was so different from everyone else's. The silence in the car was heavy, filled with unasked questions and unspoken emotions. I wanted to tell her that it wasn't her fault, that she didn't do anything wrong, but the words just wouldn't come out. I felt like I had failed her, like I had let her down by not protecting her from this. My husband drove, his eyes fixed on the road, his hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. I knew he was upset too, but he was the type to keep it all inside, to deal with it in his own way. We didn't talk much on the way home, but we didn't need to. We both understood what the other was feeling, the shared pain and frustration. Back home, life went on as usual, but the incident stayed with us. It lingered in the back of my mind, a constant reminder of how things were with my family. I wanted to confront my sister, to ask her why she thought it was okay to do something like that, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. She would probably just laugh it off, say it was all in good fun, and that I was overreacting. My husband suggested we let it go, that we focus on our daughter and make sure she knew she was loved, but it wasn't that easy for me. I couldn't just let it go, not when it had affected my daughter so deeply. I spent a lot of time thinking about how things had gotten to this point. My sister and I had never been particularly close, but I never imagined she would do something like this. It made me question a lot of things, about our family dynamics and the way we treated each other. I realized that this wasn't just about the gift bag. It was about years of subtle jabs and passive-aggressive comments that had built up over time. This was just the tipping point, the moment when everything came to a head. In the days that followed, I tried to be there for my daughter as much as possible. I wanted her to know that she was loved, that she was enough just as she was. I encouraged her to talk about how she was feeling, to express her emotions instead of keeping them bottled up inside. It wasn't easy, but I could see that it was helping. She started to open up more, to share her thoughts and feelings with me, and it brought us closer together. It was a small comfort, but it meant the world to me. I also started to reevaluate my relationship with my family. I realized that I needed to set boundaries to protect myself and my daughter from any further harm. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was necessary. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. I had to take a stand, not just for myself, but for my daughter. She deserved better than this, and I was determined to give it to her. As time went on, things started to change. I reached out to a therapist, someone who could help me navigate the complicated emotions I was dealing with. It was a relief to have someone to talk to, someone who understood what I was going through and could offer guidance and support. It wasn't a quick fix, but it was a step in the right direction. Through therapy, I learned a lot about myself and my family. I started to see the patterns of behavior that had been present for so long, the ways in which we had all contributed to the dysfunction. It was eye-opening, but also painful. I had to come to terms with a lot of things, to accept that some relationships might never be what I wanted them to be. It was a hard pill to swallow, but it was necessary for my own healing. I also learned the importance of self-compassion, of being gentle with myself and allowing myself to feel the full range of emotions. I had always been so focused on keeping the peace, on making sure everyone else was okay, that I had neglected my own needs. Therapy helped me see that it was okay to prioritize myself, to take care of my own well-being. It was a new concept for me, but one that I desperately needed to embrace. Throughout this process, my husband was my rock. He supported me every step of the way, offering a listening ear and a shoulder to lean on when I needed it most. I was grateful for his presence in my life, for his unwavering love and support. It made all the difference knowing that I wasn't alone in this journey. As for my daughter, she continued to grow and thrive. The incident at the birthday party became a distant memory, something that happened but didn't define her. She was resilient, stronger than I ever gave her credit for. I watched her with pride, knowing that she was becoming her own person, someone who was kind and compassionate despite everything. In the end, I realized that this experience had taught me a lot about myself and my family. It forced me to confront things I had been avoiding for a long time, to face the reality of our situation. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I came out of it stronger, more confident in my ability to handle whatever life threw my way. I learned to trust myself, to trust my instincts, and to stand up for what I believed in. It was a long and difficult journey, but one that I wouldn't trade for anything. I remember that day vividly. It was supposed to be a celebration, a moment of joy and togetherness, but it turned into something entirely different. We were supposed to be celebrating my daughter's birthday. She was so excited, full of anticipation for her special day. But what happened was something that left a mark on both of us. It was a reminder of how things had always been, a pattern repeating itself. My husband and I stood there, watching as she clutched her birthday cards, looking at the glitter stars as if they might give her answers. She asked me if it was her fault, if she had done something wrong. I told her, no, it wasn't her fault. It was because some people forget how to be kind. That moment was painful, seeing her try to make sense of something that she shouldn't have had to understand at her age. She held those cards to her chest like they might protect her from the world, and I wished more than anything that they could. That night, after she fell asleep on the couch under the blanket her dad had given her, I sat in the kitchen. My husband was making tea, and we didn't talk much. We didn't need to. We both knew this wasn't something new, just the final straw. He mentioned that he had paused the payments, the rent, the grocery card, the electric fund. It was a decision we had been building towards quietly, a step towards something different. I nodded, knowing it was the right thing to do. I went to the drawer where we kept important things. Inside was a folder I had been adding to over the years. It was filled with text messages, photos, and a printed email from my sister asking if I could take care of her kids for a week while she went on a solo trip. There were Venmo receipts, evidence of how I'd covered our parents' property tax. They had promised to pay me back after their cruise, but that never happened. The folder was thick, a testament to years of being taken for granted. I added one last thing to it, a sticky note that said, "Try harder next year." It was a small gesture, but it felt significant. My husband watched me as I did this. He didn't say anything, but when our eyes met, he nodded. It wasn't a nod of permission, it was more like an acknowledgement that this was long overdue. The next morning, I planned to drop the folder off quietly without any message or confrontation. Just the truth, plain and simple. They wanted to teach my daughter a lesson about gratitude, or so they said. But they were about to learn a lesson themselves. This situation didn't begin with my daughter, and that's what hurt the most. It should never have reached her. She should have been shielded from this, loved and protected by her entire family. But it started long before her, with me. Growing up in my house was like learning to perform a role you never auditioned for. You had to adapt, become whatever version of yourself would receive the least criticism that day. It meant reading the atmosphere before you could even read a book. Silence was safer than honesty, and pretending to be happy was easier than explaining why you weren't. Emma, my sister, was always the favorite. It was never explicitly stated, but it didn't need to be. It was in the warm tone my parents used when they talked to her, in how they lit up at her stories, no matter how mundane. Meanwhile, my accomplishments were met with a distracted, "That's good," while her smallest victories were celebrated with cake and family group texts. I remember when I was in 3rd grade, I came home with a certificate for perfect attendance. I had pushed through colds and stomach aches to earn that piece of paper, and I was proud. But when I showed it to my mother, she barely glanced at it before telling me that Emma had been named Student of the Month. Apparently, that was a much bigger deal. Then there was the time I brought home a B+ in math. It was a subject I struggled with, and I had worked hard for that grade. But my dad's only comment was that Emma had never brought home less than an A. And when I got the lead in the school play, they didn't even come. Emma had a volleyball game, a practice game, not a tournament, but it was important to her. So they said they would try to make it to my play, but they never did. I remember growing up and always feeling like I was living in someone else's shadow. Emma was my sister, and everything seemed to revolve around her, even though our birthdays were almost 2 months apart. Every year, our birthday parties were combined, and it always felt like an afterthought that my name appeared on the cake. I remember one year we were given one present, a pair of rollerblades, and of course, they were in Emma's size. It was as if my preferences didn't matter at all. I was always either too much or not enough, too quiet, too dramatic, too shy, too outspoken. I cried easily, I asked too many questions, and I sulked when things weren't right. I didn't smile the way they wanted me to, and I was told I was too sensitive whenever I noticed these things. There were no bruises, no shouting, just this constant feeling of never measuring up, and then being told I was wrong for noticing. I remember one incident vividly when I was 15. I came home from school in tears because a teacher had accused me of cheating on a test. I hadn't cheated, and I was devastated. My mom's response was, "Well, you do keep to yourself a lot. Maybe you look suspicious. Next time, try to smile more and act normal." It was like a punch to the gut. I felt misunderstood and alone. By the time I was 17, I mustered up the courage to tell my parents I thought I might be depressed. My mom just rolled her eyes and said, "That's the new trend, isn't it? Everyone thinks they're depressed. They're just bored. Find a hobby." Emma, on the other hand, told me I was being dramatic and borrowed my phone charger, never to return it. By the time I left for college, I felt numb. I didn't expect my parents to come on move-in day, and they didn't disappoint. They mailed me a card a week late with $25 and a sticky note saying, "Don't blow it." I didn't blow it. I got through college, found therapy, and learned how to name what I had experienced: emotional neglect, scapegoating, passive-aggressive control. I learned how to unlearn these things when I met my husband. Even then, I carried the fear of being too much. I remember apologizing for crying during a movie once. He didn't make a big deal out of it. He just handed me a tissue and said, "That scene really hit, huh?" Like it was the most natural thing in the world. He was the first person who ever asked me what I actually wanted for my birthday. And not only asked, but got it right. Not because he guessed, but because he truly listened. When I told him about my family, I softened the truth, made it sound eccentric rather than hurtful. He didn't pry. But after he met them for the first time, he quietly squeezed my hand under the table once dinner was over and said, "You weren't exaggerating." That was the moment I knew he understood. When our daughter was born, I decided to let my family back into my life. I wanted her to grow up with a big family, cousins, holiday traditions, doting grandparents. I wanted her to have the kind of childhood I never got. At first, the comments were subtle. My sister made remarks about my daughter's outfits, saying she dressed differently. My mom insisted on forced affection, telling my daughter, "Don't be rude, sweetie, give Uncle Bill a proper hug." My dad made fun of her when she cried at loud sounds, saying she'd need to toughen up if she wanted to survive in this family. I tried to explain. I told them she had sensory processing challenges that she needed understanding, not ridicule. I told them she was trying her best. They brushed me off, rolled their eyes, and told me I was overreacting. Emma accused me of being a snowplow parent, claiming I was raising a future pushover. The moment I began setting boundaries, I became the issue. I was labeled the problem, the difficult one, the dramatic one. Every time I stood up for my daughter, I was met with the same weapons they once used on me: dismissal, sarcasm, cold shoulders. Sometimes they even acted like they pitied me, which hurt more. I once overheard my mother whispering to Emma, unaware I was within earshot, "She just wants to feel important. Let her have this." It felt like a dagger to the heart. as if my attempts to protect my daughter were nothing more than a bid for attention. I remember that night vividly. It was one of those nights where sleep seemed like a distant dream. My daughter had finally drifted off, her small hands clutching a birthday card she had made for her cousins. That card represented the innocence she still had, despite everything. I sat on the couch staring at the screen, the blinking cursor taunting me to make a decision that had been long overdue. It felt like a lifetime of tension had led to this moment, this decision to finally break away from the cycle that had ensnared us for so long. My family had a way of making everything about them, their control, their hierarchy. My daughter was just another pawn in their game. As I sat there, I realized that I had let it slide too many times. I had hoped, maybe foolishly, that they would change, that they would see my daughter for who she was, an individual deserving of love and respect. But they never did. They only saw her as the next in line to receive the same treatment they had given me. It was a pattern, a cycle of dismissiveness and control. This time, I recognized it, and this time I had a choice. I could let them chip away at her spirit, as they had done to mine, or I could put an end to it. I chose to protect her, to protect us, and I knew that tomorrow, they would understand exactly what that meant. When the clock struck 4:07 a.m., I made my first move. I emailed the landlord who managed the duplex where my sister lived. I told him that I would no longer be covering the monthly supplement. It was an unspoken agreement, never formally documented, but he knew the rent always came from my bank account. His reply was swift, a simple understood. I'll inform her of the updated balance today. It was a small victory, but a significant step towards reclaiming control over my life and my daughter's. By 4 a.m., my husband was drafting a letter to the loan company about the car. Our names were on the paperwork, our credit on the line. Our money had made the down payment. Emma, my sister, had defaulted twice before we stepped in. This time, we chose not to bail her out. We chose to step out. At 6:02 a.m., we printed everything. Texts, emails, screenshots of group messages where my daughter was labeled difficult, where Emma had written that she was going to be just like me. Overly sensitive and exhausting. There was even a voice memo, a clip from Christmas 2 years ago when my mother, not realizing my husband was recording, leaned into Emma and said I never appreciated anything. They were talking about me. By 7:02 a.m., everything was in a folder, neatly organized, labeled, annotated. I bound it with a crimson ribbon I found in the junk drawer. It was from one of Emma's kids' birthdays. I didn't plan that part, it just felt right. At 7:30, we drove to my sister's house. There were no words spoken between us, just the envelope, placed gently on the doormat. We rang the bell and left. As we drove away, we heard it. A scream, a sound that seemed like it had been building up inside her for years. I didn't turn around. My husband gripped the steering wheel tighter, and for a moment he smiled. Later, I heard that the neighbor came outside in his robe, thinking someone had been hurt. He called the police when he saw Emma on the front lawn, red-faced and frantic, clutching the folder like it was something dangerous. When the officers arrived, she tried to tell them it was harassment, that her crazy sister was trying to destroy her life. They flipped through the folder calmly and told her it was a civil matter, nothing illegal, just the truth laid bare. By noon, my phone was bombarded with messages from my sister, 38 in total. The first ones were angry, demanding to know what was wrong with me, if I thought this was funny. Then came the guilt trips. "We are family. You can't do this to us," she wrote. After that, the begging started. "Please, you can't just stop paying like this because of a joke." Finally, the threats. "If you don't take this back, you'll regret it." But I knew I wouldn't. This was my choice, my stand, my moment of finally saying enough is enough. I remember it like it was yesterday, sitting in front of my laptop, staring at the screen, and feeling a mix of emotions I hadn't quite sorted out yet. I had called 4 times, left a voicemail on the 3rd try. It felt like shouting into a void. "You've taken this too far," I thought. Our family always had its issues, but you just lit a match and watched it burn. What do you want from us?" It echoed in my mind, but I didn't respond. Instead, I took a deep breath and sent the digital version of the folder to our extended relatives, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins. I didn't add any commentary, just a straightforward subject line, just in case they ever wondered why we stopped showing up. By the end of the day, my inbox was flooded with 20 replies. Half of them were variations of "I had no idea." One cousin wrote just one line, "Good for you." It was a strange comfort, knowing that at least someone understood. 2 weeks later, the real fallout began. Emma's landlord wasn't bluffing. She had 30 days to pay the full amount or face eviction. Her late car payments had triggered a review with the loan company, and she got a warning. My husband saw the notification and smiled, not in a joyful way, but more like a nod to justice finally being served. My parents didn't call me, they called my husband instead. "She won't listen to us," my mom said, "but maybe she'll listen to you. Tell her we're sorry. Tell her she doesn't have to do this." He told them the truth as it was. "She's not doing this to you, you did it to yourselves." The words hung there, heavy and undeniable. The next morning, they showed up at our house. My daughter saw them through the window and her face turned pale. I met them at the door, didn't let them in. "We just want to talk," my dad said. "This is getting out of hand." But I stood firm. "No, this is called consequences," I replied. My mom tried to cry, but there were no tears. I didn't move. They left a card in the mailbox, one of those generic sympathy ones with "We miss our family" written inside. I sent it back with a sticky note. So did I. Then I went back inside, where my daughter was reading on the couch, her legs tucked under a blanket, her face peaceful. She looked up and asked, "Were they mad?" I shook my head. "They were loud," I said. "That's not the same." She nodded, understanding more than I expected her to. That night, my husband took us out for ice cream. It wasn't a celebration, it was a moment to breathe. In that quiet breathing, there was something new. Peace. It was almost deafening in its presence. For about a week, there was silence, or maybe it was just quiet rage humming beneath the surface. My sister had gone nuclear, sure, but after the initial scream, the flurry of texts, and the failed attempts at guilt, things went dark. I thought maybe that was it. Maybe they finally got the message. They hadn't. 10 days after I dropped the folder at their front door, my daughter came home from school with a note in her backpack. It was from Emma, written on pastel stationery with little hearts on the edges, as if it were meant for a child. Inside, the message was short. "If you ever feel sad or confused, remember Auntie Emma loves you. You can call me anytime, even if your mom says no." My daughter looked up at me, confused, and asked, "Did I do something wrong?" The fury rose in my throat before I could stop it. This wasn't just about boundaries anymore. This was manipulation, targeted, deliberate, and low. I called the school immediately, and it turned out my sister had used one of her friend's names to gain access and drop something off for a niece. No ID check, no oversight, just a sticky smile and a name. That afternoon, I filed a formal no-contact order with the school, with the district, and with the police. I sent a cease and desist to both my sister and my parents. My lawyer followed up. 2 days later, a fake account started tagging me on social media, calling me ungrateful, posting blurry childhood photos with captions like, "Some people forget who raised them." Another anonymous message read, "Just remember, kids grow up one day. She'll know what you did." That was the final crack. I sent everything to my lawyer, who forwarded it to the authorities. When I think back to that time, it's like watching a movie in slow motion, each moment stretched out and filled with emotions I can still feel, as if they happened yesterday. It all started with a single post from my sister, a selfie with tears streaming down her face, and a caption begging for sympathy. "When your family turns on you," she'd written. And just like that, everyone rallied to her side, offering comfort and support without knowing the full story. At first, I kept quiet, letting her version of events echo through the digital halls of our extended family network. But slowly, the truth began to seep through the cracks. It took one aunt, then a cousin, and another before the reality of the situation began to emerge. Screenshots of conversations, voicemails played over and over. The undeniable evidence was there for everyone to see, just like it had been for me all along. My parents didn't handle it well, which was no surprise. They tried to pull everyone together, calling for an emergency Zoom meeting with the entire family. I knew it was coming, and I chose not to attend. But the fallout was inevitable. Somewhere during that call, someone finally asked why I hadn't been at Grandpa's birthday last year. My mother, caught off guard, didn't have an answer ready. The questions piled on, each one chipping away at the carefully constructed facade. Why was Emma dipping into the family emergency fund when she was the only one with a steady income? What about the story floating around about the birthday incident? Was it true? It was. By the end of the call, 4 people had quietly left the meeting. The silence afterward was deafening. My parents stopped sharing photos of family gatherings online. My sister deactivated her account. And then, as if to cap it all off, a letter arrived from my mother. It was a desperate attempt to reach out, written in blue ink, on the kind of formal stationery that seemed out of place given the circumstances. She pleaded with me to reconsider, to not let a misunderstanding tear the family apart. "Family is complicated," she'd written. "We made mistakes, but at the end of the day, we're all we've got. Don't punish everyone forever over one misunderstanding. Your daughter will regret the distance, and so will you." I read it over and over, but the words never changed. Instead of replying, I framed the letter. I hung it next to the sticky note that had started everything. "Try harder next year." That same day, I helped my daughter put up fairy lights around her new bed. She picked the soft kind, the ones that change colors slowly, as if they're breathing. Her breathing had changed too. It was gentler now, easier, no longer tight and tense like it used to be. She'd made 2 new friends in her art class, kind and curious girls who didn't laugh when she needed earplugs or asked for quiet time. She was sleeping through the night again. One morning, she came to me and said, "My heart doesn't feel like it's buzzing anymore." I hugged her, feeling the flood of relief wash over me. My decision had helped her find peace, and that was worth everything. At the end of the school year, her class held a family day event. Each student could invite one adult to share cookies and show off their art projects. She chose me, of course. Her art was a painting, a swirl of abstract galaxies and gentle pink comets. In the corner, in a black paint, she'd written, "Safe is better than big." Those words stayed with me, a reminder of the choices I'd made. On the drive home, I asked if she wanted to stop for ice cream. She agreed, then hesitated. She turned to me and said, "Mom, you did the right thing. Even if they say you're mean, even if they never talk to us again, you did the right thing." I felt a knot in my throat, but I managed to say, "Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything." She leaned back in her seat with a quiet smile, and I knew we'd be okay. Later that night, I checked my email one last time before bed. There was a new message from Emma. No subject, no greeting, just 6 words. "Are you happy now? You won." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say, but she was wrong. I didn't win. I chose to walk away. For the first time in my life, I didn't look back. Maybe I went too far, maybe not far enough. I often wonder if I should have spoken up more that night at the party, or if leaving in silence was the loudest statement I could have made. I think about what my daughter will remember, and more importantly, what she won't have to unlearn because I chose to act when I did. But now I find myself asking you, if it were your child, what would you have done? Would you have walked away, pushed back harder, or let it go completely? Please tell me in the comments what choice you would have made. Did I make the right call, or did I go too far? And if you want more stories like this, raw, real, and honest, hit subscribe.